So when you think about all of our students and the supports that they receive in their academic, social, emotional, and behavioral setting, we like to put the students in a triangle to look at what those supports look like. And so if you look at the bottom of the triangle, that would be about 80% of our students that receive core instruction. So core instruction is general education instruction from the teacher in the classroom. If you look at the yellow section, which would be about 15% of our students, we look at that as tier 2. Those are students that would start in the classroom to receive more focused intervention in targeted areas in the classroom, which could be math, reading, writing, or behavioral. And then if you look at the top, which is the red section, which is about 3 to 5% of our students, are receiving support from an interventionist. So it could be reading intervention, it could be math intervention, it could be speech intervention, just depending on what service. And then not on the triangle would be our special education services, where students could still be in the green section, the yellow section, or the red section, and also be receiving special education. Does that make sense? Any questions? And when we talk about our RTI and MTSS process, we look at supports and a team called the problem-solving process. And through our problem-solving process, we schedule meetings and supports where teachers or building administrators or our school psychologists or our parents can bring concerns about their student and their academic, social, or functional abilities or growth. We can bring them to that problem-solving team and talk about what our data looks like, how our students are growing, what interventions we've tried, how to change our interventions in order to support that academic, behavioral, social, functional growth of our students. The one thing that I think I said quickly is parents are definitely a big part of this process. So if we are going to have a problem-solving team meeting about your child, we would like you to be there. If you can't be there in person, you can join via Google Meets, you can join via phone, whatever works best for you so that we can have you a part of the process. So when do we involve, when do our students refer to the problem-solving process? So when we look at our, and I'll talk later about it, our aims or MAP testing, if your student has not grown or is not growing at the right pace, we would bring the student to the problem-solving process, look at previous interventions that have been put into place, previous data, information from the teacher, information from the parent as to how the student has been being supported, or if the student displays like a significant discrepancy from grade level peers, which, and I don't like to say this out loud, but COVID definitely impacted our students. And so in a classroom, you can have a drastic array of students' abilities because while we provided services during COVID, not every district did. And we've had so much move in and move out and changes. So students are all over the map, and that's why in the classroom we group students. But if there is a significant discrepancy is when we would want to have a problem-solving team meeting.
Is this referring mostly to academic, or does this talk about social emotional too?
So all of it has to do with academic, functional, social emotional. It could talk about speech, we could talk about OT, PTs, but all of it will be related the same when it goes through the special education process or 504 process. Make sense? Okay. I talk about academics a lot because we have a lot of data that supports our academics. When you look at social emotional, we have less data to show growth for our students when you look at that social emotional piece compared to academic. All right, So part of the problem-solving team, the goals are to gather all of the information that we have from every member of the team in order to determine if a student needs more support, which could be observations from a school psychologist, it could be data from a school social worker, it could be a screening from a speech and language pathologist. All of that, we would bring that together, our classroom data, so we could look at work samples, we could look at Ames and MAP data. We bring it all together and make recommendations at the problem-solving team. So we could adjust what intervention and supports are being provided in the classroom. We could change that grouping. We could look at a different intervention if a student is receiving SPIRE, which would be a reading intervention in one of our special education programs. If they're not making growth, then we could look at Wilson, which would be a more intensive reading intervention. If we're looking at the social emotional piece, we would want to see what type of instruction the student is receiving in morning meeting or during that what I need time, which is win time. If they're not receiving a formal intervention, we would want to then look at second step, which is evidence-based curriculum to focus on social emotional needs. And if they're not growing, then we'd want to look at social work services and support.
How do you know? How do you know as a parent?
You know. My youngest is also, you know.
So so one area that I like to look at with social emotional is if there has been a drastic change in grades. So it's a student that typically received B's and C's is now receiving D's and F's, like a drastic change in grades. If your child always had on-time homework and assignments and all of a sudden is not completing anything. If there's been a recent drastic change in appearance, so maybe the student was, very focused on their appearance, then all of a sudden has changed and, is not necessarily showering or participating or, what are other signs for, so changes in school attendance. So sometimes there could be an increase in tardies or late arrivals and then an increase in attendance, so not attending school. A student that never received any discipline referrals or concerns to the office all of a sudden is starting to receive them. So there's lots of indicators that you can monitor as a parent if you're seeing a drastic change in your child.
So what were you said there was 3 steps. So second step was second step. And
So second step is our evidence-based social emotional curriculum, which we typically start out at the tier 1 level. Everybody receives social emotional time, which would be like morning meeting or what I need time, right? And then if there still are concerns, we would look at implementing our second step, which is our SEL program. And then after second step, we would want to look at counseling or social work services. There's probably lots of other things in between there, but that's just
okay. So
that's
for
just an
morning
example.
meeting time, people might notice something, and if it does, then it goes to second step,
Yeah.
and then it needs more than social work.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to follow.
No, you're good. You're good. And you can always email me and I can help you navigate also. And then we would want to look at implement those interventions depending on what the issue is. If it's reading, if it's math, if it's social emotional, we would want to implement interventions. And then if the interventions have been adjusted and we've collected data for 6 to 8 weeks, and we still don't see growth, then the team would want to consider an evaluation for special education or Section 504 plan. Yeah, so that's all, well, depending on the area. So I could receive special education services in math,
Right.
and not in reading or writing.
No, I meant this is all before 504 or I.
Yes.
So this, okay.
Yes.
Before.
Yep. So if we go through that whole problem-solving process and you decide as a parent that you would like to request a special education evaluation or a Section 504 plan evaluation, you have that ability to do that. You have to request that in writing. And as a district, we would have a requirement to respond to you within 10 days as to whether or not we would move forward with that evaluation. If you are requesting evaluation, we would like to review any outside medical information or neuropsych evaluations or data that you have as a family or as a parent. And then we would also want to review any data that we have in order to make that determination. We do have the ability to accept or deny a request based on evidence, and we have to send that information to you in writing. If you would like to request that evaluation, it should be in writing to the assistant principal or student services coordinator for your building, whatever school building that is. And then we would communicate that information to you, and then that would trigger the process to start an evaluation. And so if we do decide to move forward with an evaluation, that's considered, it's called the domain process. There's not a better word for it other than the evaluation process and using the domain. And so what happens is we would have a meeting, you would be included, and there would be a large team sitting at the table, which sometimes can be intimidating, but everybody is there to talk about your child. And we will go through certain areas, and it will be on another slide, certain areas to talk about what data we have, what data we need, and who will gather that data. And then we have to receive consent from you as a parent or a guardian in order to move forward with that. Sometimes there might be information that we just have to review from outside medical reports or previous evaluations in order to complete that evaluation. So here's all the areas. So during the domain meeting, we'll talk about academic achievement and what data do we have from our MAP testing, from our Ames Web testing, from any progress monitoring that's taken place. We talk about functional performance, talk about cognitive functioning, so that would be IQ testing, communication, so speech and language. Health, typically we would have a nurse there or a representative from our health office to talk about the students' number of visits to the nurse's office, any previous medical needs that would impact their learning. We have to do a hearing and vision screening within our health office in order to know that the child can actually see and hear before we complete any testing. We talk about motor abilities if there's concerns with sensory needs or gross and fine motor, and then social emotional status. And then when we go through that whole domain process, somebody will take notes. We'll talk about what data we have, what data we need, who's going to complete that data, and then we would receive your consent. There used to be something called a 10-day waiver where you could waive the 10 days and we could start the testing immediately. Can't do that anymore, but we can start collecting data during those 10 days before we start testing. Yeah.
Okay. So after, as a parent, you've signed that initial consent for the school team to start the special education process, we have 60 school days to collect all of our data and then have our next meeting, which would be our eligibility meeting. So it's important. I know 60 days seems like a long time if you're noting to your school team that my student is having difficulties with learning, with social emotional. It seems like a long time, but truly there are supports that will be put into place during that process, and so your student is just not going to be left in the classroom without any of those needs being met. So that's important to know. So during that 60 days, all that data is collected, observations, as Melinda shared, that testing, if we're doing academic or cognitive testing, it might be interviews with you as a parent. Oftentimes our nurse will call the parents and they'll do a health interview. A social worker, if there are social emotional concerns, that would be an interview with parents as well. Rating scales, our record review would be like what we would go through as Melinda was speaking with the health. So anything that's in our health software, we would just do a records review of that to see if there's any noticeable patterns, and then progress monitoring. That's our Ames Web, that's our MAP testing that you get scores for your students from your school, and we take that into account as well. So after we've collected all that data, we provide the parents with a draft report and draft IEP that will be shared with you a minimum of 3 school days prior to that meeting. So that gives you a chance to sit down with that 30-page document and really digest it and highlight, answer, ask any questions, write it down so you can come to the meeting prepared and you're not seeing that document for the first time.
I will say, sorry, let me jump
That's
in
okay.
really quick. So as school employees and school staff, we use a lot of acronyms, right? So I'll say MAP testing, AIMS testing, PST process, like IEP, 504, there's so many acronyms. But if you're sitting at the table or you're reviewing the IEP and you have no idea what something means, please stop the team and say, explain that to me, because we use so many of those acronyms throughout our day. We do have information on our website that explains what most of those acronyms are, but just stop us and ask us to explain that for you.
So then, as I shared, after that 60 days, all of the information is completed. You as a parent have your student's draft IEP and eligibility, and so then we're sitting at the table and we're going through those eligibility decisions and determination with input from the entire special education team. So sometimes in a meeting you'll hear school team and special education team. The school team is obviously those that are employed by District 115, but you guys are part of that special education team. You are the #1 invitee on that invite, so it's important that you guys feel like you're a part of that special education team. So then as we determine eligibility, so we've collected all of our data, we've sat down, you guys have been able to digest that 30-page document. We as a special education team need to determine what area the student qualifies in. And so these are all of the areas that a student can qualify in. I will tell you, oftentimes it's just one area of these listed. It might be multiple of these areas. So autism, deaf, and blindness, they are together. Then deafness by itself, developmental delay, emotional disability, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities. And so that's a category when a student might have a cognitive impairment as well as they were born with a birth defect and they have multiple things that are impacting their ability in the educational setting. Orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, which is OHI, specific learning disability, SLD, speech and or language impairment, SLI, traumatic brain injury, TBI, and vision impairment. As Melinda kind of prefaced, we really love acronyms, and so we would go through, often these categories have inclusionary criteria and exclusionary criteria. So as an entire special ed team, we'll read through those inclusionary criteria or exclusionary, we'll answer questions, and we'll come to a consensus as a team.
I did have a question on
Yeah.
that. So obviously intellectual disability or like emotional disability is separate from autism? Is autism
Correct.
kind of its own thing?
Yep.
And they is it 2 separate categories or like autism is just its own category and then everything else? I know you were saying like autism, deaf, and blindness were all kind of combined.
Oh no, that was autism as one, deaf and blindness as
Okay.
another. Deaf and blindness together are one category, and then deafness by itself is another category. Autism is by itself.
Okay, so
Yep.
like, but you wouldn't get like 2 different, like, she has autism, then she wouldn't qualify for the other?
Oh no, she could.
She could.
Yep, based on that inclusionary and exclusionary criteria.
Okay,
Yep,
sorry, I'm trying
that's
to-
okay.
But I think it's important to note that even depending on the qualifying area, right?
Right.
So say a student qualifies under autism but also has intellectual disability, we are going to program to meet that student's needs based on the data that we have.
Okay, I just was confused by the quantity because I hear that autism can kind of fall under a lot of those
Sure.
categories.
Yes, yes.
So I didn't know if it was kind of by itself or together.
Yeah, and the
so-
biggest thing you'll hear when the special education team talks is impacting adverse effects of education. So if they have a diagnosis, is it impacting their education? And if it is, then we talk about they do qualify for special ed instruction through an IEP.
Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Where does ADHD fall in?
Good question, that OHI, other health impairment.
Got it.
Because that would be a medical diagnosis.
Got it.
All right, so we, as a team, we're at the table, we've decided and determined that the student qualifies for special education in one of those areas or multiple. And so then we walk through the individualized education process, or IEP. And so the IEP is developed by the members of the special education team. Every year, we are required as a school team to hold one IEP meeting. As Melinda shared, you as a parent can request an IEP meeting at any time that you feel is necessary for your student, but we will have one on the calendar every year where we talk about progress on your student's goals, where we change any accommodations, any other things that maybe they don't require anymore or we would need to add. So that happens once a year. And then we always talk about placement, and you'll hear our special education administration talk about at every meeting we want to make sure and ensure that your student is in the least restrictive environment. And so what that means is that they're with their general education, typically developing peers as much as they can, because we want them to be able to learn from their peers and grow right alongside their same age peers.
I had a question, and I think I got it answered a while ago, but I forgot. I know there's, I know that IEPs only qualify for so many years. I mean, obviously you gotta like request for them to be, like redone and stuff. And how long do they last for? Again?
So your eligibility is valid for 3 years.
Okay.
So your annual review, your IEP meeting, you have that every year.
Right.
Every 3 years, we go back to the table of that where we talked about determining eligibility criteria, and we do that every 3 years.
Okay. I knew it had like a limit. I
Yep.
just couldn't remember how long.
So if your child is enrolled within District 115, we will automatically schedule those meetings and reach out to you. If your child is homeschooled or in a private and parochial school building, the staff at the private and parochial and the homeschool, whoever's doing the homeschooling, needs to reach out and make sure that we have the student on the list so it automatically.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was like for 3 years or if she had it for, if she was like 10 or something like that.
Oh, so, and I know what you're talking about. So, eligibility is for 3 years. An IEP is for 1 year. If your child qualifies under the eligibility of developmental delay by, is it age 9 or age 10?
Before they're 10.
Before their 10th birthday, so typically at age 9, we would do a reevaluation to determine the eligibility, because developmental delay can no longer be an eligibility after their 10th birthday.
It's the only qualifying area that has like an age restriction. So from 3 to 9 would be developmental delay, and then you have to, if the student still qualifies, you have to change it to something else.
Okay.
Are these the same guidelines with the 504?
No.
Sorry.
We'll get there.
Some of them are
Okay,
same, some
okay.
of them are different. Yep.
Sorry. I was,
No, that's
my
okay.
ad's
Apologize.
19, so I know a little bit, but it just
Not a problem.
I couldn't remember how long it was. Okay, so
No, we appreciate it.
after 9, then she changes from a developmental delay to
Some another qualifying area. Yep. She
Okay.
still continues to qualify. So as I shared, and I think we will preach this entire night, is that parents can request a meeting at any time. You are a active member of that IEP team, so in order to be active, we ask that you attend the meetings. We're very flexible. Coming off of COVID, obviously we're doing everything through Zoom, and we had amazing parental participation because it was so easy for a mom or a dad or grandma and grandpa to sit in their car when they're at work on their lunch break and attend their student's IEP, and we're still very open to that. So if you need a virtual option, please let your case manager or your school know, and we will be willing to accommodate that. Otherwise, we'd love to have you in person around the table to celebrate your student. As I shared that 3 days prior, so please review those draft documents ahead of the time and list your questions. Ask any questions that you have at the meeting or once you receive those documents.
If you know what your questions are before the meeting, if you send them to the case manager, then we can be sure and have an answer at the meeting for you. If you bring it to the meeting, we might not have an answer, but if you let us know ahead of time, typically we can make sure we have an answer for you at the meeting.
We have a lot of parents that, sit with their students and do homework, and so you might have an idea of where your student is struggling, or you see a specific area that your student is struggling. So make sure that you talk about that at the meeting, and make sure that when the school team is talking about those goals that they've identified for your student, they are meeting those needs, and if any of that input is necessary or appropriate, we'd be happy to consider that. So important timelines. This will be one of the slides that you could refer back to. So as we started this presentation, request for evaluation, our school team has 10 days to respond if you as a parent or guardian requests an IEP or special education evaluation or a 504 evaluation for your student. That notification of conference, if we are having a meeting for your student, you should receive an invite, 10 calendar days prior to that meeting. So we want to give you ample time, if you want to come in person, to take off. If you need to schedule that lunch break during that specific time, we are required to give you those 10 calendar days.
But I will say legally, your employer is required to give you time to attend your child's IEP meeting. Sometimes parents say, can you write me a letter? Of course I'll write you a letter.
For an open evaluation, we have 60 school days from the domain meeting when you sign consent to hold that eligibility meeting and determine if your student qualifies. The parent or guardian receives those draft documents at minimum of 3 days. You might, even if it's a minimum of 3 school days, so make sure that you get them if you're coming in on a Monday. Don't count the weekends because you have to count those school days. Annual review, we hold those yearly, where we review goals, progress, and update any supports. Reevaluations that we talked about every 3 years. Nope, that's all right. Every 3 years to determine if the student still qualifies, or do we need additional information, and to determine educational needs.
But just because those are timelines does not mean you can't reach out and say we need to have an IEP meeting because these are my concerns.
So in the event that we go through that domain process, in that event that we go through the domain process and the team has data to support that the student does not qualify for special education, there are no adverse effects that we could identify in the educational setting. The team will need to develop an alternative plan. And so we won't sit at the table and just say, nope, sorry, your student doesn't qualify, and close the book and leave. So alternate plans can include adjustments within the RTI process, as Melinda talked about, all of those tiered supports, alternative general education resources, whether that be the reading interventionist, the math interventionist, speech intervention, any instructional adjustments, or alternative planning such as a Section 504 plan. 1 second before we get into the 504 plan, Melinda and I wanted to note that these are all of the special education programmings that we have within District 115. So we have students that qualify for resource level support, speech and language level support, diagnostic, which is strictly for our kindergarten through first grade students, compass level support, which is for our students who require intense social emotional support throughout their school day, in the general education and at the instructional level of their same age gen ed peers. Instructional skills program, which we like to shorten to ISP, and that's for our students that require educational support in the areas of reading and math with a modified curriculum, so it's not the general education curriculum that their gen ed peers would have. Life and academic skills, we focus on functional skills, we focus on enriching academics through those life skills. We have a STARS program that stands for Skills, Training, and Related Service, and this is truly our communication-based program. So many students in here require executive functioning support and direct communication push-in support from a speech and language therapist. And then we have an early childhood structured classroom, which really encompasses just early learning skills, executive functioning, communication, all of those things for our earliest learners.
And so I can, no, that's okay. So when you look at all of our special education programming, our goal is always to serve our students in the least restrictive environment. So we would like students to be in the general education setting as much as possible, and then receive those special education or programming supports either pushed into the general education setting or pulled out into groups and special education services. We do have another service that is not listed on there, which would be private day programming, which is not within District 115. That is where we send our students to other school buildings outside of Yorkville in order to provide intensive support. Our goal as a district is to always do our best to keep our students here learning in the environment that they live in. And I just realized we forgot transition program. We just opened our new transition program this year and we don't have it on So we've talked a lot about the special education process, special education services, and programming. And so now the next part that we would like to talk about is Section 504, evaluation and supports. And so determining the difference between special education and IEP and Section 504 eligibility and 504 plan can be very tricky. Even sometimes our school staff struggle to make that determination. But really, the difference when we talk about it all the time is special education and IEP, the student requires specialized instruction from a specialist. So that would be social work support, occupational therapy, specific academic instruction by a learning behavior specialist. A 504 plan is to give you access, give the student access to their education via accommodations. So accommodations could be seating in the classroom, it could be extended time, it could be testing accommodations, things like that. So really the difference is that specialized instruction is for special education and access and accommodation is 504 plan. Sometimes 504 plan would be, a student, I'm probably jumping ahead, would be a student that might be diabetic, or a student that might have a seizure disorder or significant allergies. We might create a 504 plan. Many times students with ADHD or executive functioning, we look at that 504 eligibility. So what I will tell you is Section 504 does not have the same legal timelines and requirements as special education. In our district, we follow the same timelines as we do for special education. It's not required, but we do that so that, one, students don't get lost in the evaluation process, and two, so that we have accurate data every single year pertaining to our 504 plans pertaining to the students. Some districts will do it every 2 years or every 3 years. We feel that it's very important to do it every single year. What questions do you have for us?
I know that you guys will a little later, so if you have questions, go ahead and feel free.
And then are we going to email this to the emails listed on that? Because these are links that I just wanted to make sure that parents knew that they could have.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, like a PDF of this or something?
Yeah.
We'll send it to
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Yep. 'Cause
I
these-
didn't include your head in my
Thank you.
pictures.
Thank you. I
Both
tried
of
to get out of the way.
these, both of these then are links that you can have
Awesome.
that link you to those parental
And
resources.
so what these links are is IDEA is what is the guiding legality for special education. So that is a giant resource. I would have printed it out for you, but it's very giant for parents and families. And then ISB has a lot of documents on special education.
I did have a question in regards to the reading and math specialized. I know you're saying that could be part of the IEP. So my oldest is IEP but for speech therapy.
Sure.
I don't think she's going to need it for long. If she tests out of that eventually, but then a couple of years later needs that math and reading, do I have to do this whole thing all over again, or do I just email you guys and say, hey?
So the tricky thing about special education and eligibility is that all of the services in your IEP have to directly relate to your adverse impacts of the reason why you
the
qualify.
IEP would have to go all over.
So if your child only qualifies in speech and language, there should not be math and reading support in goals in their IEP.
Right, I just meant,
But if your child needs like response to intervention support, because their data is not growing in their math or ELA, we would follow that RTI and MTSS process, that triangle,
okay,
and put interventions into place, no matter if they have speech and language impairment or not.
okay.
I do have a quick question.
You're being recorded, so just don't,
Oh.
you can talk about your child, just
That's
don't use
good
first
to
and
know.
last names. Yes.
So we're really happy with the IEP that our child was given last year, and support that he was given was wonderful. He has a very unique IEP. He's functional.
Okay.
So he's high academically, but we have found from grade 1 kindergarten to now he's in 4th grade at YES that one definitely affects the other. So it feels more like a 504, like he's given excellent accommodations, movement breaks. We had him tested. He's sensory ADD. And what we're finding now from that jump from one building to the next, we're hoping we're gonna kind of smooth some things out. We probably will request a parent meeting, but he was given resource time in a resource classroom during wind time, so about so many minutes a week. He was probably pulled out for 20 to 25 minutes about 4 times a week last year. So at the end of the year with his IEP meeting, it was shared that we want to help him to be a bit more independent, so we were gonna do 50 minutes, so he should be pulled out now twice a week in 4th grade at YAS. What we learned is that because he's in a higher classroom and he's doing well academically, he's not in your typical co-taught classroom where a lot of those teachers come in to help with student IEP academic IEPs. So we're finding now that he has an aide coming to, well, a special ed teacher is pushing in his room first thing in the morning during SEL time. And that's our concern, is that it's not during wind time where he's getting more of that support.
Sure.
So I guess, long story short, my question is, if it's in his IEP from last year that he would be pulled out for 50 minutes, twice a week equaling 50 minutes, should that be what is followed? Or does the team kind of have wiggle room, like, okay, it's 50 minutes? Because I don't want to have a rigid thinking process. I still want.
So I would have to see your child's IEP to see exactly how it's written in and what the notes say. But I would say if it is written into an IEP that from this time to this time,
It does say
Melinda
that
would be pulled out to receive services, then we would need to follow that. But if it's more like of a flexible, I would have to see it.
it says in like a special education classroom. He is to be pulled out in a special education classroom.
Then my answer would be yes, but I have to see it to be able to give you the stamp of that's actually the requirement. I will also say, even if there isn't a change in buildings, from third grade to 4th grade is a challenge, I would say, for every single student, not just students with IEPs.
The curriculum jump.
Yeah. So the curriculum in 4th grade is much more challenging than in 3rd grade. And so even if, say, your child went to ACES, 3rd to 4th grade is still a pretty difficult jump. Just adding a new building also is.
Right, so we kind of want to get it ironed out, so we just ahead of it.
Any other questions while you have us? There's a presenter afterwards, so we don't want to.
I don't want to spend too much time tonight, but I have a lot to learn about, you kept mentioning executive functioning. Are there resources around that? Of course.
There are. How about I link some additional ones on this, and so then when our director of marketing and storytelling emails, it'll be on there. Okay, you bet. I have a weird question. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but an IEP is a legally bound document, so you guys have to follow what's on it, where a 504 is not as legal.
They both are legal.
They're both legal. Okay. I knew it was like not suggestions, but like, like I felt, for some reason I thought the IEP was a lot more like legally.
So it's funded differently, and the laws that oversee IDEA oversee special education, and Section 504 oversees 504. So it's completely different. The funding and the required services and supports. 504 is starting to catch up to IDEA and IEP and special education. So they're making some legality changes, which we're all for. It just takes a little bit for them to catch up.
Okay, I just, long story short, that's what I thought
I'm just gonna say, wow, you're managing a lot.
You're welcome. We welcome help anytime.
Let us know how. Really.
We're a little late, so we missed introduction. Could you tell me what your positions are?
I'm Melinda Lasky, I'm the Director of Student Services. And I'm Emma McGuire, I'm the Assistant Director of Student Services.
Okay.
For the entire district.
Yes, so we,
Okay.
anywhere from health to special education to discipline. All of us.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yes. Got it all.
I didn't say that in the.
Yep.
Any other questions before Maribel comes on up? Nope. Brent, when you, Mr. Edwards, when you email this information, will you add Emma and my information in there?
Yes.
I didn't bring any cards with me.
Right. Yep.
Sorry.
Um,
Thank you.
You bet. We'll do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you everyone for all those questions. I think everyone asked great questions and great answers. Thank you, Ms. Melinda and Ms. Emma. And now we have the assistant data analyst, and there's Andrea Delgado, and she's going to be the next presenter. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Andrea Delgado. I am from the Technology Department. I'm the data assistant analysis. So I'm more in the student services side of it under technology. So we work with rostering all platforms. So Canvas, Seesaw, eSchool is what we use to do attendance, gradebook, report cards. So that's on our end. You guys will see the hack part, which I will touch in a minute, of where you can log into, see your students' attendance, grades. That's where you would go to print report cards. But because I am from the technology department, I do want to point out the website here. If you ever have questions or concerns about some of the technology that we use or your children use, I recommend coming here and going to the parent tab. You will also find many other items under here, but a few I wanted to point out from the technology department is, if we would scroll down, the instructional technology page, if you would click here, this will take you to digital resources, how-to guides, if you're stuck with using Seesaw, or if you have children who are in 7th and higher. Canvas is on here. So there's a few items on here that if you ever get stuck or need ideas, I always recommend starting here. And then, as you will see in my presentation, you can always reach out to the school, and then there's always a help desk ticket that you can put in, and that is for students, staff, parents. We would get it and we would help you out. If we aren't the right ones, we would push it to who it belongs to. Okay?
Well,
Go for it.
I just had a tech issue.
Okay.
So where would I go exactly? 'Cause it's
I'll
the,
show it on the spreadsheet. I
it's
have the
the-
email
the-
address and everything. It's a box.
the app for the KM Boo or whatever. It was like for the preschool.
Okay. We'll need to look at that one. I don't know much about that one yet, but I will show you where to put in a
They
ticket.
were like, put in your email, and I'm like, okay, and it didn't pop
It didn't
up.
pop
so
up.
I'm like, I
And that
don't-
might be a newer application that we haven't started syncing to yet. So
Okay.
if that's what it is, we just need to do that on our end, and then we push all the kids from our rostering system and we push it out to all the apps. So I don't know that one offhand, so it could be new. And we just haven't loaded the kids in there yet, but we'll look at that.
Perfect. It could be new. I just
Yeah.
got the. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I should jump on this right away.
We actually did just purchase a new software for early childhood, so that's probably, I don't remember the name of it, but that's probably what you're trying to log into.
Yeah.
Like literally just
It was
purchased
kind of
it.
like Seesaw, but not.
Yeah.
But
So we probably haven't rostered it yet, so that's
Okay.
probably why you can't get in. But once we get instruction on getting it set up, then it should work. And then if you can't, then you could put in a ticket to.
okay, I just didn't know who I was supposed
Yep.
to ask.
Not a problem. Okay, so this is a good resource here, and then I'm going to, the other thing, we're going to hack, and while I'm here, it's called Home Access Center. Have you guys been in the district before, or is everyone brand new? Kind of both?
1 year.
I'm new.
Okay, so Home Access Center is also called Hack, and that's where you can log in to check students' attendance, report cards. That's where you would log in to register. If you're a returning student, you would log in there. And again, you would come here under the Parent tab, and then if you would scroll down, it's going to be right here, Home Access Center. And this is another technology page, so you would have information on here regarding Home Access Center, a few tabs on the left. And that gives you a few ideas of what you can see on Home Access. So if you scroll down, which I will go into a little bit more deeper, but these are the things that you can log into Home Access for to look on attendance. Depending on grade level, you could look at project reports, registration report cards, and schedule. And to log in here, which we will come back to kind of, is you would just click right here and it would take you to the login page, which would be here. And you would just log in with your credentials. Again, I will go over if you can't get in, there's also a way to get help regarding that. And the other thing I will go over too is if you have multiple students, you want to make sure that your students are linked. Sometimes if you have, let's say, a 5th grader and a 6th grader, and then you move in with the new kindergarten, sometimes they just don't get linked. So you could reach out to us or the school and we would just connect them together so that when you log into Home Access, all your kids would be together. Okay?
I have 2 kids in 2 separate schools, they are linked. When
Yes.
they get older and move on to the next building,
They'll still be linked.
they'll still be linked, okay.
Usually it's newer when it's the kindergarten students that come in. Sometimes they don't get linked right away. Or if you move in later, different last names, sometimes there's a few issues of why they don't get linked. But if you're already linked now, you'll always be linked.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if I have to redo it all in
Yeah.
the next 3 years.
No, once we get you, you're good. Okay, so we're, like I said, on the website, these are a few things that you can log into Home Access to review and look over. So we're going to go over the icons. The first icon is going to be the home icon. That's where you could see your children's courses, class times, and teachers. And this is going to be more for the secondary. So if they're in 7th grade or higher, that will be more detailed oriented for those students. The next icon will be for attendance. So you will be able to view month by month, see what their attendance looks like. Did they miss? Were they tardy? You will be able to go in and see that for your students, okay? And then again, grades, depending on the grade level of your students. The first icon will be for grades, and that's going to be for elementary. You'll be able to go in and print a report card for them and get their detailed. It's a little bit further detailed for the secondary, which would be the classes icon. That's going to show more scores, more related to homework assignments. You will be able to print their report card. Again, quarter 1, quarter 2, there's a toggle between the semesters or quarters that you're looking at. So that's the only thing different. I will show you a picture of what Home Access looks like, but these 2 icons will depend on the grade level of your child. And then the other icon would be for registration. So returning students, we would ask you to log in, fill out the registration form for the upcoming school year, and get all that finished through Home Access Center, okay? There are other things on there like the fees that will show you what your fee statement, your balance is, but we would pay on a different portal, which I can show you that also, okay? And then here is a quick, who do we start with if we need help? Please contact your student school first. The secretaries there should be able to help you out and assist you, but if they do run into trouble, they would create a ticket and push it towards us. Or on the right side would be the tech help. If you need assistance, you would send an email. I do have it a little bit bigger. So when you're doing a tech support ticket, we recommend if you can share your student information, your name, grade, building. Sometimes we just get, we can't log into Seesaw, but we forget to share the student's name. So then we would reply back, can you share your student's name, birth date, building? The more information you can provide us in that ticket helps us move the ticket along and help you guys out. And then I wanted to show you
still do that? And then if they do, is there like an easy way to access that?
So each building is, so usually A, B, C, and D is elementary.
Okay.
Middle school is, they're pretty much as a schedule. They're in teams in middle school, so they're in like a team 7-1 and they stay together. 8-1, depending on that. The high school is a little different. Once you get to that point, their schedule differs every day.
Okay.
So you have some time till she gets there, but A, B, C, D is for all the way through 6th grade.
And
If you look at the homepage,
I have
home
middle school.
access, on the calendar, it shows day A, day B.
Right, I guess does A, B, C, and D always stand for the same thing?
Yes, for the kids' schedule. So A could be music.
No, I meant like, sorry, I think A is for art this year and B is for science or whatever. But
Each
does
building
it
could differ.
change?
It could. I don't know.
It
I
could
think
change
it
by
depends
building,
on the
it could
building.
change by year?
No, usually your building sticks with it. So if they're usually A, they usually keep it as A as art, and the building keeps it the
Okay, so
same.
next year I'm not gonna be like, what's A, B, C, and D all over again?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the building keeps it the same.
Okay, I just wasn't sure, but I couldn't find it
Yeah.
when I tried looking.
And right now, I know Circle Center and YIS are the same,
Yeah.
you know,
Same.
fine arts.
They
or
might, yeah.
Whatever it is.
It might be the same district-wide.
Okay, like I said, I wasn't sure and I was trying to find that information when I first got it. It was really hard to find.
But when they get to 5th grade and start music, then, like, for my daughter, two of those days, an A and a C, or B and D are music days.
Okay.
And then one day is art and one day is, I forget what the other, technology.
Oh, yeah.
Technology. Yeah. So.
Any other questions? So again, and we can share this, you're sending something out later to everyone. So I can make sure we have the tech email on there in case you do run into anything. So keep that if that is a new program. We
Okay.
probably just need to roster it and we'll look into that. And then before you guys leave, we'll check your statement, okay? Anything else?
Remind me of going to the
Yeah. Well, and as I'm on here, while we're talking about, again, this is a great resource coming to this parent tab, and then if you have to pay anything, you can always click the payment portal, and you could log in, and it would take you to any fees that you owe.
I just want to make sure that I'm not missing a fee. My youngest is at Early Childhood Center.
Mhm.
I know it's a free program, but I wasn't sure if there was like any other fees.
No, I think you should be good, but we can check.
Okay, because I know it's a 0 on it, but that
Then
makes
yeah,
me
you're
feel
good. Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I at least owe somebody a couple $100
Fees have been
somewhere.
distributed for the school year, so if it's not there, you're good to go.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like a tech error.
Yeah.
Is there an app? Is Home Ed Center an app or am I?
There is a Yorkville District app that you could log into home access on there also.
Oh, so it could be on your phone. Okay.
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. And sorry, what's the app called?
You can just search the App Store, Yorkville 115 or Y115.
Okay.
You should pop it up there.
Y115 is what the app is called. But then when you go into the app,
It's basically
it's basically a bunch of little links, and so you have to go to a page with Home Access Center.
There's different,
Yeah, I think I like that.
Yeah. Easy access, multiple ways. Okay, that's all I got.
Any final questions? Mr. Bell? So when we designed the website, we really tried to focus, because March 2nd we launched this site. And under parents and students and community, we really tried to focus on the thought, thinking through the lens of a parent, and then thinking through the lens of a parent and the student. So everything is hopefully very easy to find. If it's not, please let one of us know, and we can direct you.
There is one thing I kind of had an issue with.
Okay?
I was trying to find the Early Childhood Center's phone number like last week or something, and I don't think it's the right phone number on there. So it kept saying it was like YIS, and then
There was-
eventually I contacted the district, and they said they were having phone issues.
Yeah, there was an issue last week where for some reason the early childhood phone was redirecting to YIS. So
Okay,
whatever
so-
phone number that was before, that should be fixed now. So
Okay, I
It
just
should
didn't know
be
if there was like one
doing
page
correctly.
where you could put all the phone numbers for all the schools, I think that would be, personally, I thought it'd be easy to find because you get a little lost in like all the phone numbers and stuff. But, okay, so it was a tech issue because I wasn't sure.
Yep.
And the only number I had, I think, was the cell phone of the principal, and I didn't want to keep bugging her about stuff.
Oh, that's right. She has her cell phone on there.
Right, but it felt rude calling her cell phone when I'm like, I could call the school and find out that information, so.
Here's a page with all of them on there.
Oh, okay, I just, for some reason either couldn't find that or like it was hard to find that, I don't know.
And how did you find that again? Or is it about?
If you go to About,
Good feedback.
So,
Good feedback.
it's obviously right there, I couldn't find it, but it took a while to try and find something.
I do have one little question. Where do we find our student's ID?
in Home Access.
Okay.
I don't have an example, but I believe it's on the registration page,
I think it's like next to.
and then it's
I
next
had
to
to
their.
call this summer to sign her up for Camp Imagination, and so.
And I can help you too after this. We can pull her up and make sure, but it's should be on the left. I believe it's above the student's
I got it.
name. Got it?
I got it. Thank you.
Yay!
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. There is a QR code, if you can scan it and do a survey, just for us to give us a little bit of feedback and what can we improve, what else do you want to see in the future, what kind of workshops do you want to see. So that will help us a lot. So if you can do it before you leave, it will be, I would really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, we will be here.